Welcome to Relish Books. Today I'm talking about Agatha Christie, the most prolific detective writer of all time. And she wrote, it's hard to pin down a number. If you look it up, people will say all kinds of different things because she wrote at least 6 novels under a pseudonym. She also has tons of short story collections. A hard number that I found is 66 detective novels, like actual novels, but there were people saying they'd read over 100 of her mysteries. So whether it's in short story form or whatever, again, or 6 novels under a pseudonym, she wrote so much. She wrote a bunch of plays, or at least, I don't know how many, but she has the longest running play, The Mousetrap, in world history. So that's pretty neat. But yeah, just a extremely influential, very well-read author. I don't know how much she's considered like a classic author, because she does have a bit of a quantity over quality issue in her work for sure. But she definitely deserves respect for how much she wrote, how well read she still is. All these years later, she's been consistently popular, and her books have consistently sold all through the years. She's sold over 2 billion copies of her work, and this number is surpassed in history only by the Bible and certain works of Shakespeare. So she is a massively influential author and definitely deserves to be talked about. So I had a phase of reading her books when I was in my teens, and I still look back on them though, not like I do with some of the other stuff I read where it's like, okay, I know I wouldn't like that anymore. I would still enjoy her work if I got back into it, and I always mean to every once in a while because I read a bunch of her books and there's still a ton that I haven't read. But yeah, they're really fun, and for how fast she wrote them, and she did relatively little, very little editing. She pretty much wrote them out straight, and that's the way they were, which is incredible. There are certain times when you can pick apart certain problems in some of her books where you can definitely tell she was rushed. I believe there are some contradictions in certain of her stories, but all things together, very impressive. And again, the writing isn't stunning, but it's really good for what it is. It's very enjoyable. You aren't distracted from the the thrills of the mystery by poor writing like you are with a lot of modern detective work or thriller work. And I think her writing actually shines the most in her autobiography. I enjoyed that more than any of her novels that I read. I was extremely gripped and interested by it. She had such a compelling way of telling about her life that made it really fascinating. A very long, very full life. I really, really enjoyed her autobiography. Would highly recommend it more than any of her books. Even if you haven't read any of her books, the autobiography is definitely worth reading. She was also famous for disappearing randomly for 11 days, and nobody ever really knows the truth about that. It's one of these big mysteries in her life. Some people think that it was like a publicity stunt because it was kind of like a plot from one of her novels. This very mysterious disappearance. They later found her in a hotel where she had checked in under a fake name. The last name she used was actually the last name of her husband's mistress. So there's all kinds of intrigue there. And she claimed amnesia, so I feel like she claims amnesia, but nobody really believes that. So who knows? Some people have speculated that she was trying to frame her husband for her murder because her husband was having an affair and was about to leave her. Who knows? But again, another added mystery that she does not address in her autobiography. But it's still super interesting. So yeah, she's also the most translated author in the world. She's just this huge, huge figure. Some of her better known characters are like Miss Marple, Hercule Poirot, if I say his name right. She herself said that he was, I don't remember exactly what words she used. Just a frustrating character to write. He was kind of annoying to her, but he was popular, so she kept writing him. It reminds me of, Sherlock Holmes. Conan Doyle didn't want to keep writing about him, but he did because of popular demand. And Agatha Christie and Conan Doyle were contemporaries. Conan Doyle actually was called in to help when she went missing, which is kind of fun because I guess he would be consulted in certain things. After he was so well known for Holmes, he would be like consulted on certain jobs, which is funny. So again, something that I think is so impressive is that she wrote all her own stuff. She was a highly, highly prolific author, but all of the work was her own. She wasn't having other underwriters writing her stuff for her and then putting her name on it. This is all her own work. Again, very little editing. She would just write it, and that's the way it was. And they're not, the quality isn't that of, even like Conan Doyle. Conan Doyle is technically better. She's no Charles Dickens or anybody else like that. But the writing has this, it's hard to describe, almost, I want to say almost like this inherent quality that kind of came from the time period where people just had a better grasp of language in general. I feel like part of the quality, I think, really comes from the time period when people talked in a more sophisticated way, at least from our perspective. That's what it seems like, and it lends this quality to even stuff that maybe at the time was considered like popular and not super great quality. I don't know, it's just really interesting. Some of my favorites, I don't know. I have a lot of favorites. It's hard to remember all the names. That's another thing. That's something that's annoying when a writer has so many books and they're like all detective stories and the names don't always really reflect what they're about. It can be so hard to find the one you're looking for. Like, if you ever saw a Perry Mason episode and then you wanted to watch it again later, it's basically impossible to find because those names really reflect nothing of what's in the show, and the shows are like 100, of the same things, just switched around different ways. But anyway, I think So Many Steps to Death is a fun one. I kind of like her more standalone ones. So Many Steps to Death has a different detective who's only in that book. I kind of like that better than some of her others. I'm not a Miss Marple fan. I really like some of those books. There's one in particular. I don't remember the name of it. There's one in particular that's like one of my favorites, but I really don't like the Miss Marple character. She really annoys me. People talk about like Poirot being annoying, and Agatha Christie herself thought that Poirot was annoying, but to me it's Miss Marple. Miss Marple is kind of insufferable. I really don't like her, but she still has some really good books. I like Poirot. He kind of gets old is the thing. Like you read a few books with him and it's really good, and then after a while it's kind of like, okay, it's just the same thing, the same character, his same quirks, and he doesn't develop enough or have enough, you don't love him for himself enough to like want to read only about him. Not like, Sherlock Holmes, you read those stories for Sherlock Holmes. And Agatha Christie's books are not that way. You read the books for the plots, for the actual twists and turns of the mystery. And I like that a lot of them are different. Sometimes she'll have like a really frustrating one where it is pretty much impossible to actually predict the murderer based on the evidence that you have, especially when people are like falsely claiming to be the murderer, like every single character does at some point. So sometimes she has those ones where it's like, okay, it's just like stacked against you. It's not fair. It's impossible for you to know who it actually is. And then she has other ones where she kind of gives you enough information that if you're paying attention, you can actually figure out who the murderer is for yourself before it's revealed, which is just really fun. And that's what these books really come down to. That's what they're for. It's important to remember what a book is intended for when you read it and judge it on its quality. You want good quality and everything, but ultimately these books are just written for fun, to be entertaining, to kind of give you this little escape into a different world. And yeah, you're not supposed to be like awed by the writing or, blown away by description. You're just following a plot, and they're pretty clean as far as detective stories. I mean, there's definitely a lot of intrigue, but like it couldn't really be otherwise. That's just how things work. If you're writing detective stories, that's what's going to happen. But she keeps it, she doesn't go into stuff like some people do. She keeps it pretty clean, which I appreciate. But yeah, they're very exciting, very fun. There was definitely a time in my life when I would just go into the library and they had like those brown leathery editions, and they were just like stretched down the aisle, and I would just like grab a stack and read them. And yeah, it was just really fun. If you're looking for if you're like a mystery thriller lover and you're looking for something that's actually decent quality, I would definitely give these a try. Again, Agatha Christie deserves her place. On the list of influential authors because she is a huge figure and I really respect her. So, anyway, those are some thoughts on Agatha Christie. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.